Definitely one who's always playing jokes or making me or something like that. She's hilarious. She would always make videos. But she also was a very, very selfless person, always thinking of others. She was always kind of that person that like instinctually knew when something was up or knew when you might just need to see the video texted to you or a hug. She helped me so much when I went through my biggest struggle with depression when I was a sophomore in high school. And it was totally new. No one ever talked about it. She was there. When I think back to my teammates in general, she ranks at the top of someone who's just incredibly selfless.
She was just hell-bent on finding a top-notch education at a top 20 school for the lacrosse program.
She's just been this athlete her entire life. And when you're such a high performer, and that's where a lot of like your validation comes from, and that's what's away from you, it's like who am I?
When you look at in terms of what we now know as the end result, it wasn't that.
Well, we never knew she was depressed. As a matter of fact, she was never diagnosed with depression.
How could someone this strong
And vibrant
and this energetic and this, how she felt like she couldn't talk about this?
I want to scream to the kids. You are not alone. Morgan thought she was the only one that was feeling this stuff. She was scared. She didn't know what was going on. She didn't know that there was help out there. She was very convinced that no one would ever understand and that she could handle this. And that was wrong. And so that's what I want. That's what Morgan's message is all about. There's so many Morgans out there, and no one should lose their Morgan. In the first 3 years, Morgan's message had over 3,100 student-athlete ambassadors all across the country, in Canada, in the UK.
That is both high school and college student athletes who voluntarily reach out to us wanting to become mental health advocates on their campus. We task them with having monthly meetings on their campus. We provide them with programming materials to utilize at those meetings. So we work with incredible mental health professionals who are experts in all kind of facets of mental health, mental illness. I think it's really special to have someone your age or your role models talk about it and make it a lot easier for you to come forward and say, you know what, I've been struggling. The peer-to-peers just makes them feel a lot more comfortable, a lot more open to sharing and connecting with each other.
We're trying to equalize the treatment of mental health the same as physical.
I wish I had something like Morgan's message when I was in college. Beyond those monthly meetings, they have larger outreach events on campus. Dedication games are far and away the most popular larger events students run.
All the people in the stands, the parents, the fans, the spectators, whomever, they pause and they're like, what does that mean? And if we can get everyone to just ask, what does that mean? Think of how broad this message can get.
The passion's there, and so we really just are the organizer.
The mental matchup is stories of student athletes, mental health professionals, trainers, all different sorts of people sharing their journeys. They're vulnerable, they're brave, they're powerful.
You feel like you have experienced something that's really, really hard and you're ready to share it out to the world to help other people who might be going through it. And I think that gives a lot of people the power to relate. I truly feel like changing the dialogue and changing it and making it like it's okay not to be okay. It is a little bit of a double-edged sword where it's like, wow, the community has just grown so naturally and so fast. It's great, but it's just really emphasizing just how needed something like this was.
Her story is resonating with so many people. There is some good that's coming out of this. Morgan's story didn't end.
We are working for something so much bigger, like than Morgan. And Morgan is up there like, hell yeah, keep going, you're making such a difference. She's telling you, keep going. This is good. It's amazing how many people see the butterfly and know what it means
we knew she was gonna do something special, and we're like, we always do that. It's not the way we would have chosen, but she's having a pretty big impact on a lot of people, and I think she would love that. I know she would. Trauma baby.
That's,
She was very stubborn. She was determined.
I think that's the end of starting over. So we want to introduce to you, they're going to be on our panel here, but Brenna and Shelby from Marist College are part of Morgan's Angels. I think. Morgan's what? Morgan's Message. They're heading up the Morgan's Message Club on this campus, and there are Morgan's Message Clubs throughout the country in colleges and universities and high schools, and you guys are doing some great work and spreading some good word, so thank you. You guys have a seat. So while they're getting settled in their chair, my name is Andrew O'Grady. I'm the CEO at MHA Dutchess County. I apologize for my voice. I'm not sick or anything like that. My voice goes up and down based on whatever, so I might sound a little gravelly at times. I'm sorry. I wanted to share, Morgan's Message is important because they had a movement, and I want to share with you and ask, maybe there's some volunteers here that will spearhead a movement within your organizations. MHA of Dutchess County is embarking on something called the 988 Challenge. It was up on the screen before, but prior to seeing the screen, how many people in this room know what 988 is? How many people don't? That's really important to know, because everybody should know about it, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that you don't. The fact that most people don't know about it is what is driving me to make a challenge, an internet challenge that we hope goes viral. The internet challenge is to raise awareness about what 988 is. 988 is designed and developed by the federal government and state governments so that every municipality or every area of this country and the 5 territories, you can dial 988 at any time, day or night, 24/7, 365, and there will be somebody on the other end of the phone, a professional therapist, somebody will be there to listen to you and help you. You're not going to send police cars, it's not the 911, you're not going to get fire trucks and everything. Somebody on the other end of the phone, a suicide lifeline, basically. But it's 988, it's very simple. You don't have to memorize 10 digits. So we want that to be known, and we're trying to make that happen grassroots right here in Dutchess County from MHA Dutchess County. So we're starting a challenge. The challenge is sing it, shout it, or show it. Yeah, whatever. Scream it, sing it, show it. But we're really, ultimately it's about showing. It's about making your own public service announcement. So with all of you guys with connections to young people on the internet, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, challenge them to do a video. You can scan the code in the back and you can go to our landing page. Challenge them to do a video, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, hour, that doesn't matter how long, about 988, what it is, that it's there for you 24/7. Have them nominate 3 of their friends to do the same thing. And then, they don't have to, but have them go to our landing page and make a $9.88 donation. This is not about money. It's about raising awareness. The money's a good thing because the money that MHA gets that's unrestricted can go toward events like this. That's why this was covered in full, because of money like that. So it's not about money, it's about raising awareness. So we really want to make that happen, and we're hoping that you guys take a picture of that QR code, check our landing page out, and share it with your students. Okay, so here we are. Yes? What? There it is, there's the QR code. Okay, so I wanted to do, these things. I've been on panels, I've moderated panels, and sometimes, I could easily go through and have everybody tell something about themselves, but you've already heard from many people on this panel, and that could take up the whole time. So what I really would like to do is I want Caitlin to introduce herself because you haven't met her, and also Anthony to introduce himself, and then we're gonna open it up to questions. That's the easiest thing. I want you to get what you're gonna get out of this day. We don't have a lot of time, So I don't want you walking out saying, "Just ask that question or whatever." So this is a panel of experts, and maybe Anthony, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Anthony. I'm the sports psychologist here at Marist, and the majority of my job is working with the student athletes here in maybe mental health capacity or a sports performance capacity in regards to maybe mental struggles they're experiencing on the field or whatever the end surface might be. Yeah, that's me.
The first sports psychologist in Marist history.
Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin Leach. I'm the Deputy Director of Athletics and Director of Student Athlete Welfare at Vassar College. I've been there about 9 years. A big part of my role is really supporting our student athletes holistically. So we're a Division III institution, and so really connecting our students across campus to the resources that we have is really important for us to help support them in their athletic career.
All right. So does anybody, what are you taking from today? I can say that I bet that everybody in the room, is hearing everything that's said, and there's a part of your brain that's saying, yes, we do that, I do that. Person I was sitting next to says that, kids come up to her a lot, and another person said kids come up to me a lot and talk to me about stuff, and that's really great. And those kids, you're connecting to those kids at a different level because they're coming to you. But what about the other kids? So what are you taking from this? I mean, are you hearing that this is something you could take? This is an actual curriculum. It's actually a concrete thing you can do. It's written out. Is this something you feel you'll be able to bring to your teams and to your coaches? Anybody want to comment on that? Oh, we're finished. What about you guys on the panel? What do you think? You've seen people roll these out all over the place. So how do you think is the easiest way to roll it out?
I was going to say something else, but the easiest way to roll it out, I would say, is you're going to all have a password. You can just go into the digital platform and pick what you want. You can also reach out to us or Kristen, who Play Like a Champion, they have the parent workshop I noticed that seems really good. And so you can just dig in and start doing it and try and have one conversation. The only one thing I kind of wanted to share on this panel is watching Morgan's Message, which is an incredible organization, and we work with them as well. We get some of their lessons embedded in our digital platform, and Morgan's Message uses the Kevin Love lesson. So a lot of these mental health nonprofits work together. And the nice thing about this world is it's now that we all work together. But the one thing Lucy and I were at a coalition of athletic communities for mental health coach in Aurora, Colorado, and a researcher came on and was doing a whole presentation about collegiate athletes who had attempted suicide, and they were now in a recovery program. And she did a study because she wanted to see how long the time was in between when they made a plan and when they attempted suicide. And she asked everyone in the room, like, how long do you think that is? And I was thinking in my mind, and I have a master's in human development studies, I was thinking 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days, okay? It was 20 minutes, to 20 minutes. And it like haunted me because I thought there's 300 people at this conference and there's all these crisis hotlines and crisis, that's what a hotline is really, a crisis counselors and sports psychologists. But I think it's so important because if you can kind of bake this into your interaction with young people, I realize that that's the preventative work that's like really so critical. That's what it is.
I can just add, whenever we implement any kind of programming at our institution, we do some piloting with it, right? So we take a small group of student athletes and we pilot it with them. I would also say getting your coaches to buy in. So I think there's a lot of athletics directors in the room, maybe bringing it to them first, seeing how does this resonate for them, how they can implement it within their programs individually, and then maybe as a department overall. So we start really small to try to get that buy-in so that students go back and say, I had this really great experience. Or they give us feedback to say, this actually doesn't fit for our campus. So just a thought there on implementing programs.
Yeah, I would also add that in my experience, a lot of coaches, athletic directors, maybe people who aren't trained in mental health, it's a really scary conversation to have with somebody. And I think the idea is like, you're not in that role to prevent the suicide, assess the suicide. but to be there as a support person until like a professional gets there. And I think a lot of the times when we avoid those conversations, that's in reality it's just our own anxiety about the situation coming up, and not so much about the personal role. So just wanted to recognize that and validate that they're really hard conversations to have, and we might still have to have them anyways in certain cases.
Yeah, that's really important. There's something called mental health first aid, and anybody, if you're connected to, well, some of your superintendents, you can roll that out in your school. Our agency has trainers that train youth mental health first aid. It's really just teaching kids in the youth mental health or adults just how to feel comfortable and how to ask questions. That you're not learning how to be a therapist, as you're saying. None of you are learning how to be therapists through this. Just being able to feel that you can talk comfortably and openly and not feel anxious, because it is easy to avoid. Nobody wants to go into that world. It's scary to ask a question. What if you get an answer back that you don't want to hear? My daughter's an 8th grade teacher at Haviland Middle School, and she was coaching the basketball team, Haviland Middle School modified, and one of the kids came out. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's built into her genes, but the kid wanted to talk to her and then told her all about stuff about not feeling well, wanting to hurt herself, and all this stuff. And she sat and listened. She's not a therapist, but she did, and she was able. The connection that teachers and coaches have with kids is so important. We all remember our teachers, and we all remember our coaches, the good ones or the bad ones. You don't want to remember it as a bad one. You want to remember it as a good one. And I think that's where the empathy comes in. You don't have to be touchy-feely. You're coaching. Sometimes you're coaching sports that mean you have to be aggressive and strong, whatever. But your kids are kids, and they're human beings, and you really need to show that they're more than that. That's why I resonated with this whole project. And the goal here is to have, you're all in the room. This was an incredible turnout. You're all in the room. You all have leverage over coaches in your schools. So the way CJ and I see this is that in about 6 months, we're going to have a follow-up to this. And we hope that all of you in the room will send 4 or 5 of your coaches to the next one. Now we have 350 people in the room. Maybe we have it at the McCann Center, in the gym. And it's not going to be as long as this. It won't be 6 hours out of the day, 5 hours out of the day. It'll be an hour and a half, 2 hours to give them a specific, coaching on how to go through these lessons with the kids, and to remind them, the coaches, the ones that are actually working with the kids all the time, they need to get this lesson. So that's the goal we see going on, and we hope that works. And how do you guys see helping us with that if that were to happen? 350 people, you guys can send some professional athletes our way, help us out, draw them in.
I mean, our team can definitely fly out and come present that. We also, again, do so many things virtually that work very well, the way Kristen did. And that's always free. That's available for you guys too. So if you don't want to wait 6 months, but you want to bring it to your whole athletic staff or department, we can virtually, around your schedule, plan that and do an hour-long session to get that in your hands immediately.
You're on the panel, you probably have things you're itching to say, or what do you want to
Any other questions? In your experiences for the students that need that conversation, you find them going to a leader on the team prior to a coach, or who's there you think is like their initial contact?
I think whoever they're going to feel the safest with is going to be the person they're going to go with. And that's not a knock on anybody that might be in a leadership role, but just whoever they feel the most comfortable being vulnerable with. And I think it's important to maybe, as best we can, relay that message to the person who needs to know it. If it's like a teammate, I'm not sure, like a teenage teammate might know what to do given that conversation. But I think typically they're going to go whoever's going to feel psychologically the safest person to talk to about it.
That's a really good point. That's why we're encouraging all coaches to participate in these activities. Because if you do, I think you're going to be looked at as a safer person for that kid to talk. So it just demonstrates that you're really listening and care.
I was also just thinking about it as a male coaching female. So they feel more comfortable going to another female or 50-year-old dad.
The other thing I was going to add is there's this sports psychologist at Rutgers that did research that showed whoever the athletes were, the coach they were closest to, whatever their perspective on mental health was, determined whether they were going to go reach out for support if they needed it, which sounds obvious and very simple and common sense. But he, studied this football team where they had different coaches working with different athletes. The coaches who spoke positively about mental health and that it can be beneficial to how you play and just your life, those athletes were the ones that saw the sports psychologist, whereas all the rest, there were a few coaches who were talking negatively about mental health, saying this is if you're weak, you don't go see a sports psychologist, suck it up. Those athletes never came into the room to talk to a sports psychologist. So it really does determine how you talk about it, just in general conversation, determining if your athletes are going to be willing to reach out for support when they need it. I think that's really important.
And the other thing too, I think, building off of what Anthony was talking about, that first person that someone tends to reach out to is who do I trust, right? But that sort of twofold feeds into the reason why I decided to talk a lot about that coach-athlete relationship. Because if that person trusts you, that might maybe make or definitely create less barriers to coming out and talking to you. But more importantly, if that first point of contact is not you, the person that they go to, if you have a good relationship with them, is much more likely to escalate to you or to another adult who can then reference the 988 or get you a professional or get in the middle of the plan and then the action. So I think that trust.
The goal also is to try to build through, if this has some movement, have MHA kind of be your guide, local guide. So if you do run into situations where, our agency runs the Dutchess County Mobile Crisis Team. So, we have people 24/7 that could be dispatched. That's in Dutchess County. There's many of you from outside Dutchess, but, we have that ability, and we want to become that hub and that place that you can call for resource and ask questions and guide you. And if we were able to raise some money for this 988 challenge, let's say that were to happen, we could build out a department that focuses just on coaches support around mental health. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish.
So 2 questions. First one in the training module. Is there something that addresses who I choose to go to as another teammate, to train teammates on how to not just hold back and have refer? And then for our student athletes, we're also going in professions. We have aviation majors, people going to be doctors, etc. They're reluctant to seek support because they don't want that on them.
We see that in every part of society. I mean, we have a big veterans department in our agency, and we got around that by only hiring veterans that maybe have struggled and have PTSD themselves, and they make great connections. But and typically a veteran wouldn't talk to me. I mean, I'm not a veteran, so it's about finding peers to connect to. It's about making connections, about finding who has interests the same as yours, and helping people get out of their shell. I mean, that's really important to make that connection. It could have been a teammate, as through your conversation before. Yes.
In the situation of when my athlete takes another one, you can't do it when you do the thing. I said, why don't you share it? And you're immediately reported. You guys tell you gotta tell the principal, you gotta tell the school, they're gonna tell my parents, the police are gonna show up myself. That's the other thing. We're one, right? If they're going through those scenarios in their head, they want to come to us, they want to talk, but they know if they stay above where we've got to go above our head. And you want to go you want to be there for the kids, and I have open communication with my athletes, but they also know if they come to me and say certain things, or they say certain things to their teammates, and the teammates come back to me. Now
it's tough. I mean, the mental health system, I say a lot that I've been proud to work in this field for 35 years, but at the same time, it's not the greatest. I mean, it's not the most empathic it can be. It's more punitive, and we haven't worked all that out. But yeah, that's a struggle. I mean, that's an interesting scenario. A kid comes up to you, tells you about a friend, but won't tell you who it is because you're a mandated reporter. Well, what's that kid going to do now? Go home and something bad happens to the other kid, and now that kid's going to feel like I should have said something. It's tough. You guys are going to have time.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And I think what I was going to follow up on from the last question is being in this role, there's going to be times when I think some of your student athletes, particularly in the situation are going to be really upset with what you have to do, and like having to be maybe the quote unquote bad guy really sucks. But I think when the teammate doesn't maybe want to share who it is, I think if you're able to take a breath in those moments and just come from a place of like curiosity and asking questions, because what if you were in that role? Would you want to be safe? Like, asking the student or this athlete, like, if you were the one that was in danger or harming yourself, would you want somebody to know that information or to be able to help you with that? And yeah, I think unfortunately when you do say these, like the buzzwords that you were mentioning, it does kind of go up the ladder and it proceeds in a certain way. But a lot of the times the mental health documentation is very confidential. So it doesn't necessarily always appear on a record, like we were saying before. Like if you went to your counseling center, our records never pop up on any sort of documentation after graduation in that capacity. So I think often coming from like a place of curiosity and maybe wondering like what are the barriers in the way of them wanting to address it? Can we get to the point where maybe the person can seek help themselves? That way that you don't have to go up the ladder. Those are just a few of the recommendations.
Yeah, we do quite a bit of training on campus. Again, I'm working with collegiate athletes, but really a lot of training around like where does their capacity stop? How much can they really take on and how much should they really pass on? We also, if that student were to come in with me, I would be explaining, here's what happened, right? And so them having an understanding of like the process in which, hey, they know you're a mandated reporter, but here's how the response is going to go, to reassure them that it's not all of a sudden going to be, unless it is, right, police or folks arriving, this is kind of our next step. So reassuring them or offering them then the resources to go back to their friend of like, here's the best guidance that I have for you. Because again, we don't know who that student is. I always say to our coaches, to our student athletes, never let it sit with you, always pass it on to folks above you because we need to respond and take care of our students. So it's something that we continue to try to educate, but it's absolutely a really tough position to be in for sure.
These are like, there's a worst case scenario that you're talking about getting to that point. And that could happen. But having these conversations doesn't mean that that's going to happen a lot more. So that's something we all have to remember. I know there's probably people in this room that are like, oh, if you bring it up, then it's going to be a windfall of people wanting to immediately go to the hospital and suicide, all this stuff. That's not going to happen. This is about prevention. This is about educating, making people feel comfortable, knowing that 988 is available, knowing that other people on their team, it's safe to talk to them, coaches are safe to talk to them. I do want to talk to you guys and ask you how you're doing and how you got into this Morgan's message, and share your story, please.
Yeah, so I started getting this Morgan's message about 3 years ago. I have torn my ACL 3 times, which put me out of sports for a while, which is when I really had to focus on my mental health. I did struggle personally during that time. I was a lacrosse player. Lacrosse was like my whole life before. And just being taken out of the sport and being caught on the sideline and there's nothing you can do about it is really hard. So I was really grateful to find Morgan's message at that time. I ended up bringing it to my high school and then we wrote it here at Camaris. But yes, Morgan's message has really helped me learn that it's okay to struggle at times and you're not alone, and just normalizing the message that physical health is equal to mental health and that there are people there for you and that there is help that you can find.
Yeah, so I'm Shelby, kind of similar. I was introduced to Morgan's message in high school. Personally, my sister passed when I was in high school during the peak of field hockey season, so it was really a strange thing to go from like struggling with that to then having to go playoff and sectionals and defend your titles, whatever. But the difference was having a support of teammates and your coach and understanding that you can still be an athlete while understanding how to like navigate these difficult times. So we stuck with it through high school and we wanted to bring it here, and now we're an official club, so we're getting ready to start up. If anyone here wants to help us, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to have you come in and talk to any athletes or non-athletes, anyone. So yeah.
Great. That's great. It's all you mentioned. It's all about breaking down the stigma attached to mental health, because mental health is the same as physical health. Nobody has a problem
telling everybody, oh, my my appendix burst or whatever happened physically. But when it comes to that, nobody wants to talk about it. So the more it's discussed, the reason I've done so much radio in the last 10 years is only, if you listen, if you ever heard any of my radio, is it's not about MHA this, MHA that. It's not, I'm not selling anything. I'm really just spending the money on the radio to just raise awareness, have a conversation happen. I'm hoping that people are driving in a car and I say something about something mental health and a kid asks mom and dad a question, whatever, it starts a conversation. It's all about conversations to make it normalized. And by you having that club and doing your activities, it helps. By you guys implementing this stuff in a conversation with students and athletes, it's going to help. Anything we do to get to that point. I don't know how long it's going to take. Hopefully we do get to that point because, you know, that young kid that you were talking about that confided in one friend, doesn't want to say anything to anybody else, that suffering in silence is a terrible thing. And whether it's mild anxiety, mild depression, whether it's something more serious, hearing voices out there or something like that, it's suffering in silence and not telling anybody makes it a million times worse. And there is help. I mean, there is help. Your athlete will be much better if they got a little help. Think about if Kevin Love, imagine how good he would have been if he didn't have to deal with that abuse. If he, you know, took a little medication that doesn't mess with your ability to play basketball, it's not addictive, a mild antidepressant, bringing from like a level 4 to a level 5, where he's feeling maybe a 6, where he has a little more energy, he would have been incredible. He was incredible, but he would have been, you know, even better. I think about Mike Tyson. I grew up with Mike Tyson in Catskill, New York, and when he lost, I don't know how many of you remember that fight, but I believe, I don't think this is not talked about, but I believe he was bipolar, and I believe that he was always at a 6 or a 7 level where his mind was really working. He was full of speed and energy. It's like drinking 2 cups of coffee, and that was him. But that day he fought, he didn't get any help for that, and that day he fought and lost to Buster Douglas. I think he was about a 4 or a 3. He had no energy. You know, when you're depressed, you have little energy, your brain's not working as quick, you don't have as many reflexes, and I think that's what was going on, untreated mental health stuff. We're always, we can be your best you. We have a podcast, Your Best You. We want everybody to be their best you. So this is one attempt to make that happen. Does anybody else have any questions for this incredible panel of people? Yeah.
What I don't really pertain to this, you know, Michael talking about a long time ago. Kids today and talking to my colleagues, they don't seem to have recourse. You know, mental health, physical health is still there, but you know, when something doesn't go well, or like we talked about it, you know, coach directing you, you know, during that. I'm not talking about our modified levels of participation phase, but like we get up to varsity and you know we're competing, you know, we have goals. And I also have a lot of kids who, you know, we do these celebrations where they go on and play team report, and 1.5 of them don't finish. So I don't know if there's a connection there or maybe they can a little bit
I'll take a go on it. Yeah, I think trying to collect my thoughts, make sure I'm not just babbling. In my world here, I see like a lot of the student athletes experiencing like a lot of perfectionistic tendencies. And I think when you look at like the Venn diagram of like perfectionism, like anxiety, resilience, and performance, like somewhere in the middle is like the inability to like maybe make mistakes, or like how we're viewing mistakes, or like how we're viewing to be coached. And I think a lot of the times when these like things come up with that, it's based on this idea that they are like a lot of their identity is based on being an athlete. So I think it's really difficult when maybe a mistake goes wrong, or maybe when we're getting coached internally, maybe they are recognizing it as they're not perfect, or there is a mistake, or they're not as good as they thought they were. So that's not to take a knock on anything that the coaches are doing, but just recognizing, like, I feel like a lot of times, not that maybe that they're not resilient, but it seems to be, I think we see it across the board, and even in just general counseling center, like the symptoms of anxiety, depression are skyrocketed since the pandemic. And maybe that might also just be a product of people talking about it more, but I think a lot of them are experiencing it more, particularly with how they're viewing things on social media and how they're interacting with each other. So I think it's okay for them to be upset that if they do get coached that way, but also like you can still play and perform well in spite of maybe having a difficult emotional reaction.
I would say, sort of building up that, before I was at West Point, I did all sort of private practice. That was the number one thing that when coaches would reach out to me, be like, these kids are not mentally tough. I need you to come in and build their mental health, right? And I think we could talk about societally, like why do we think that is? What do we think is going on? That's a different conversation, I think. I think for whatever reason, and we see it in elite performance domains outside of sport as well, when people are showing up, the resilience traits are not as strong and obvious right off the bat. And so I've worked with a lot of coaches that are like, we're going to build mental toughness by, I'll drill you into the ground, well, I'll scream at you, I'll put you through this gambit, and that'll make you tough. And I think that is probably not where a lot of those people are at. I think it sort of falls on coaches, leaders in those high performance domains to talk more openly about this is how we get through tough, right? I'm going to put you through some tough drills, but this is how you're going to deal with the tough part of it before we start the tough part, right? And so that's something that I spent a lot of time on with West Point, obviously the military training pretty intense because it needs to be. And we're taking children before they get there, right? And putting them through that. So this is what it's going to be like. I can't really tell them all of what they're going to do, but it's going to be hard. Here's how you're going to get through the hard thing. Here's what you're going to want to focus on. And so building mental toughness is not just exposure to hard things, it's building the coping tools and then utilizing them during hardship. I think those coping tools were built differently, in some ways better, in some ways not as well, in previous generations. So I think right now we're at being explicit and that's sort of talking about, that's definitely in that intersection of that diagram I'm talking about, well-being and performance, talking about how do we get through those challenges, whether they're athletic, personal, interpersonal, and then giving them the opportunity to put those things into practice, reminding them about that on the sideline. Hey, we're in that tough moment of the game or practice, or whatever. Remember, this is what we're going to do. And we can kind of build those skills in a much more tangible way. And then the output is what you're talking about. Okay, now we have those more resilient. So there's a pathway. I know, like, we all kind of coach it a little bit differently, but there certainly is a pathway. I think it just falls more on the people that are leading to kind of do that. That's
Yeah, I kind of have something that follows up on that. Everybody has any like set recommendations where having to deal with athletes and perfectionism, and then sort of being towards truthful care. They want to be perfect, and then if they make mistakes, like why didn't you anyway? It doesn't matter to me. That's sort of mentality.
Sure, I think there's two things that come up with that. So the perfectionism is like the classic like moving goalpost, right? So like if they hit the goal that they wanted, well, that wasn't good enough. So if they keep moving the goalpost, so they're never like satisfied in that case. So I think you can address that. And I think a lot of the time, but I could talk about that in a second. But the too cool to care, I think, is often just a form of avoidance. And I think kind of piggybacking off what you were saying, like the cadets can't really avoid anything. They have to kind of do it. So like they kind of build that in that way. Whereas like now we can just go onto like Instagram or TikTok and avoid everything that we want to or have to experience. So I think a lot of the times it's like they really do care, but they want to avoid all the uncomfortable feelings that are coming up because being imperfect feels really, really discomforting. And I think the question is like, why are you maybe participating in these perfectionistic behaviors? Is it because you see yourself as a high performer and that's what I do to hit my goals? Or do you do it because I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety and I just want to get rid of the anxiety, so I'm going to try to do this perfectly? Because I think it's a very fine line and they kind of produce very different things. Does that answer the question?
I'll quickly comment on the last question about kids not having resilience anymore. I think another thing to think about is I'm at the cusp at the end of Gen Z, so I lived a life where I didn't have social media, and then I did have social media. And I think this would probably not be an answer you want to hear, but as to what Mitch was saying, is that even having more grace for the kids, because you can go on TikTok and watch a video from an active war that's happening and people being blown up, to a girl on Ozempic that you idolize, an influencer who's so tiny and now you're shameful about your body, to this athlete getting an NIL deal, making $1 million at 18 years old, to then a funny video about a dog, like all within 30 seconds. And so I think what we are having in the palm of our hands constantly, in addition to now my coach is on me because I'm not performing well today, which I think is totally valid. And trust me, some of my favorite coaches were the ones that were in my face. I think that it's also important to remember that we didn't have that going home with us after practice or a game, whereas these kids do. So I think it's just something to keep in mind that they do have a lot on their plates. And like you're saying, when they're trying to avoid them, uncomfortable emotion, they're immediately going on TikTok, but then they're seeing a lot of other really bad things or really good things. It's just a high and low constantly. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and maybe the current collegiate athletes and kids can understand this more, but it's a lot to have in your brain by 8 a.m. before you can go to practice.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider, sorry, is because I just thought of it, is how are the coaches like showing up every day? Because in my experience here, a lot of the times the student athletes have a difficult time when like maybe their coach is, and I'm not saying anybody in this room is, but maybe we're emotionally labile given like the day to day. Are you showing up consistently every day? Because I think they really benefit from like the consistency, what to expect from you or whoever the coaches are on this team. And like when it's inconsistent, or if we don't know if we're going to get yelled at for this or yelled at for that, they seem to really struggle with that. And that's not to say that you have to be perfect, but that's something maybe to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm not one of the panelists for it. I feel like I could just steal. I can steal the microphone and talk whenever I want. So one of the thoughts that I've been having a lot about when I'm having this conversation about what we're doing here, is this sort of idea that speaks to this resilience. I think at least the analogy makes sense to me. Is when I was a kid. Well, all right, I'll go this. How many of you think that it's important for our kids to stretch, like our athletes to stretch, right? How many do you think it's important for them to like hydrate, right? Well, when I was a kid, like we never stretched, and if you took a water break, like it was going to make you weak. And that's what your coaches told you, right? So we all know that that's not right, right? We know that we're going to actually be more resilient when we stretch, when we hydrate. And I think of that the same way as what we're trying to talk about here. Is it's kind of changing the game about the way we think about what resilience looks like. Instead of it being, you have to be tough because I said you have to be tough and you figure it out, it's saying, no, part of our job is to give the kids the tools to actually be resilient and not just like say, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to suffer through this. And then at the end of all of that journey, I'm going to have all this stuff that's packed up inside me that now I have to deal with. It's like, let's give them the tools now. Let's give them the water now. Let's teach them how to stretch now. I think that's my thought on it.
Thanks. I'm sorry I didn't put a chair under it.
I got this one.
Okay. Yeah, you made a good point. I mean, it's when I was talking to somebody earlier about, when you have a psychology class. When I went to college and had a psychology class, and I opened up the textbook, and the teacher said, before you look at this textbook, you're going to think you have every diagnosis in this book. You're going to be sick with all these things. You're going to think you're sick. Don't do that to yourself. It was only a book. Now, these kids can look at social media any minute, get it right in front of them. They don't have to go to the library with the Dewey Decimal System like I had to with a couple books. They can just find everything they see. And that stuff, half the time, isn't accurate. But they all start thinking they have things. And that's not good either. It's a tough, kids are inundated with, to your point about the resilience. I don't know. There's a million reasons why they might not be that resilient. They quit easy. But I don't know. I mean, if I was a kid nowadays, and my kids half jokingly say it, well, we're not going to be around in 5 years anyway. I mean, I think hopefully they're half joking. But, when you see the news, constant news cycle about, World War III, World War IV, all this stuff, it's just, how is it important anymore that you're playing sports? How is it important? What is anything important anymore? So we can't solve all those problems, but just be aware of it and have your coaches make practice a place kids want to come to. And I'm not saying dial it down. If you're the kind of coach and you need, listen, a coach should be gearing their energy. You should be able to gear your energy to all different players. The one player you got to grab by the helmet, not in a horrible way. And that's going to motivate him, and he's going to be appreciative of that. And one kid, if you do that to one kid, he's crawling up on the floor, he's never coming back. So you got to know your kids. You got to get to know them. These exercises they're all teaching you, are all going to help you get to know your players better and coach your players better. And we're about ready to wrap up. Does anybody have thoughts that they want to share?
Just one more thing, I think, on the resilience piece. It's a metaphor that I've used before to talk about it, and I think it's an easier way to maybe think about it. So I'm going to talk about trees for a second, so stay with me. As you can probably see around campus, there's like these really big pine trees, and they look like these really strong, sturdy structures. And then you think of like a palm tree, which is like this flimsy, like little tree that blows around all the time. But when like difficult weather comes, like snowstorms, tsunamis, hurricanes, pine trees are the ones that get uprooted, whereas like palm trees are the ones that bounce around in the difficult weather. And I think that is what I think of when I think of resilience, is being able to be flexible in really difficult moments, not to continue to run through the wall, but to think about ways to maybe get around it. Because the storm is going to come, and you are either going to get blown away, or you can be a palm tree, be flexible in those difficult moments, and think differently and be cognitively flexible.
Let's all be palm trees. I love it. We got 1:28. I'm all about time. So, CJ, I know you can talk for 10 minutes, but we got 2 minutes out of. Does anybody have any? I don't want you to walk out here going, "I should have said this." Anybody? All right. Well,
there's info.
Yeah, there's info on the table back there from MHA. Please share that code. Please, maybe have your team do this challenge, this 988 challenge. It's all about raising awareness, letting people know that 988 exists. So if you're in the middle of the night, you have nobody to talk to, you can pick up the phone. This was great. We hope to do this again in 6 months. We have your emails. We're going to keep you informed about what's going on. If everybody stayed here, nobody really got up and left. This is really good. I could tell from your eyes and your vision that you were into this. So we're going to keep this going. We're going to look for something bigger in 6 months. We're going to address the coaches directly, and we hope you participate. So, anything else?
I think one of the things we want to do is get this podcast thing going, right? Where so if anybody wants to share their story, wants to get involved more in what we're doing, or has ideas about how we can better engage together, right? The mental health community and the youth sports community in our area. Any ideas, any thoughts, if you're willing to be a part of what we're doing, we'd love to hear from you. Again, you'll get some emails out and you can communicate back to us. But that's really the goal for me here, was to put a bunch of good people in the room together we're all serving the same people. And the hope is that out of this, you guys get to talk and figure out what's the best way to serve those people. So if you have ideas, you have thoughts, you want to share your story, please do it. Please let us know. We really appreciate it.
All right, you've been seeing me go around with the cameras and the microphones all day. I'll actually speak for a moment. I'm Connor. I'm with MHA, production and social media manager. As CJ just said, we have a podcast at MHA. It's currently called Your Best View. And one of the segments that we're looking to do starting this summer, but recording hopefully in the next couple months, is our champion segment. And that's going to be hopefully sports segments, people who are just like everybody on the panel today, including everybody out here. If you have a story that you want to tell, because it's through the stories and examples that they told today that probably stuck with you, if you have a story in your own right that you want to share on that program, please reach out. You can reach out to Andrew. You can reach out to CJ. I'm here as well. I have cards. If you would like to tell that story, or you have an athlete or somebody in your life that wants to tell that story, we'd be more than happy to have you in the studio there at 253 Mansion Street, where we have our Poughkeepsie offices. I'm going to hand it back over. And also, if anybody wants photos or videos from today, they're going to be posted online eventually. Give me like a week or two. But if you want specific stuff, I can send that to you. All right, cool. Here you go.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.